Tonight, pro-Palestinian protests taking over college campuses from coast to coast. Unrest erupting at more than a dozen schools as demonstrations fueled by the Israel-Hamas war grow. Hundreds of students arrested at NYU as protests grow out of hand. Columbia University, which sparked nationwide demonstrations, canceling in-person classes over fears of safety. Ahead, we speak with two students on opposite ends of this protest. Tonight, they speak face-to-face. Also, Trump's Tabloid exposed, the publisher of the National Enquirer, describing how his publication helped the former president's 2016 campaign. The tabloid's catch-and-kill scheme on full display. So how can the jury believe a man who profited off fake stories, including write-ups about Trump's opponents? Remember that one about Senator Ted Cruz and his father's role in the JFK assassination? Spoiler alert, turns out it was a big lie. Plus the judge's warning to Trump's defense after a meeting over his gag order. Tesla stalling out, Elon Musk's electric vehicle company reporting its biggest revenue drop in more than a decade. The tumble shocking even an analyst's initial estimates, which driving numbers to tank as Musk accelerates on his next venture, fully autonomous cars and robo-taxis. We'll explain. Get ready to tear up your contract. Well, maybe not yet. The Federal Trade Commission announcing a ban on non-competes. Officials putting an end to agreements which prevent workers from taking jobs with competitors in the same industry. We'll talk to a lawyer live about what rights you may or may not have right now. Front door kidnapping, terrifying moments as a woman clutching onto a front door is dragged away screaming. What we know about the alleged abduction caught on camera. Plus, Ozempic baby boom? Is pregnancy an unintended side effect of the weight loss drug? The increasing number of women saying they conceived unexpectedly, some while on birth control. We speak to an OBGYN who tells us this is actually happening. She explains why. Plus, to catch a car thief, a California man's tech-savvy ways coming in clutch when his car got stolen, the daring mission to track down his missing vehicle, and the jarring theft all captured on dash cam video. The alleged thief actually confessing on camera, not realizing he was being recorded. Top story starts right now. And good evening. Tonight, pro-Palestinian protests are spreading like wildfire across college campuses. And besides the mass arrest happening, some colleges now going virtual and graduation plans being re-examined. In a few cases, students will not be returning to campus because they're afraid of going to class because they're Jewish. And remember, these are college campuses, which throughout our history have been the incubators for change and acceptance and understanding. But now some of these campuses that claim to promote and foster diversity aren't practicing what they preach in classrooms, their brochures, or their websites. Look at this. This is New York University. 120 protesters taken into custody after a demonstration there turned chaotic. And today, hundreds of students staging a walkout and rally in response to last night's actions. And it's not just in New York, right? Protests and encampments are popping up all across the country, from California to Michigan to North Carolina and Massachusetts. Tensions reaching a tipping point as hundreds of students face arrest, some even suspended and banned from campus. Columbia University, which sparked the wave of protests, coming under fire after reports of anti-Semitism, violence in and around campus. And the school, Columbia, which cost more than $89,000 altogether, facing sharp criticism, some calling for tuition refunds. The reason? The school is now shifting to online classes in the final weeks of the semester due to fears over safety. Tonight, we hear from two students on both sides of that conversation. This as colleges grapple with how to get their schools back under control with graduation just a few weeks away. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin starts us off tonight.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Clashes and arrests from the streets of New York to the University of Minnesota to Cal Poly Humboldt. As more universities crack down on pro-Palestinian protests, citing safety concerns and anti-Semitic rhetoric. Pro-Palestinian encampments now across more than a dozen campuses as students call for universities to divest from companies connected to Israel.
We're paying a lot of tuition to be here. We want to know where our money is going. We want to know where the investments are going as students.
Overnight at New York University, police say 120 protesters were taken away in zip ties. 116 were released with summons for trespass, including Assistant Professor Zach Samelin. Did you have the opportunity to leave?
I did have the opportunity to leave, yes, but what I did instead was I linked arms with my colleagues on the faculty of New York University in order to protect our students from the police.
The university said many of the protesters were not affiliated with the school and that they'd witnessed disorderly, disruptive, and antagonizing behavior, pointing to intimidating chants and several anti-Semitic incidents reported. The days of protests following congressional testimony from Colombia's president, creating a new flashpoint between free speech and hate speech. Why do you believe they stopped this protest?
NYU has been engaged in a campaign of repressing pro-Palestinian speech for 6 months, 7 months. That is, I'm unequivocal about that.
Students insisting the protest was peaceful. Today, with the NYU Business School barricaded, students gathered in nearby Washington Square Park.
It's really frustrating because they say they're for free speech and they say they're for academic freedom.
At nearby Columbia University, classes are being offered online the rest of the year. The pro-Palestinian encampment still standing following last week's mass arrests.
It's not safe.
Associate Professor Hagar Shamali says the university needs to do more for Jewish students to feel safe.
It shouldn't be that we have to shut down classes and go virtual and force us to stay home and encourage Jewish students to stay home because the protesters have created an unsafe environment. It should be the other way around.
Meanwhile, U.S. House Republicans demanding Colombia's president resign immediately for failing to crack down.
Okay, with that, Aaron joins us tonight from Washington Square Park here in New York City, where protests are taking place. So, Aaron, I know the temperature is going to get a little hotter tomorrow. The House Speaker is expected to visit Columbia University.
Yeah, that's right. House Speaker Mike Johnson's office put out a statement saying that he's going to meet with Jewish students on Columbia University campus. He's expected to hold a press conference following that meeting. And tonight we're also hearing from Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. He just put out a statement denouncing anti-Semitism, saying, quote, "We will continue to do everything possible to protect the Jewish community during this very fraught moment, fight the cancer of anti-Semitism, and redouble our efforts to bring communities together." Tom.
All right, Aaron McLaughlin leading us off tonight. Aaron, we thank you for that. For more on the rise in tension on college campuses as protests continue, we wanted to speak to students who can share their take on what's happening on their campus. We're joined now by two students from Columbia University. First up is Nadia Ali. She's a PhD student who is a pro-Palestinian demonstrator. And Parker DeDecker, he's a freshman and he's also Jewish. Nadia, I want to start with you. Talk to me about why you support the pro-Palestinian protest on campus right now in Columbia.
Sure. So I, like many people around the world, have been very saddened by the appalling violations of human rights in Gaza and by the mounting death toll and the mobilization of students in solidarity with the Palestinian people and their call for justice, their call for peace, and for an end to ceasefire, for the respect of human rights, for the respect of international law, has been a source of comfort and a source of hope for me and many others on campus.
Are you satisfied with the way it's played out, or has it gotten out of control?
I think it's important to keep in mind that the protesters here are striving to draw attention to what is happening and to call for the respect of human rights. I think I am kind of honored to feel that mobilization on campus, but certainly I want to relate kind of also the angst felt by students who have been suspended for speaking for the ceasefire and the end of violence.
Parker, you're actually at your home right now. You're not on campus because you temporarily have left Columbia. I know you were on campus wearing your yarmulke last week when you were verbally attacked for being Jewish. Can you share more about that experience and what it's been like being Jewish right now on Columbia's campus?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Tom. So last week, Wednesday, obviously our president of the university, President Shafiq, testified in front of Congress regarding anti-Semitism. And this drew a lot of strain from the Jewish community as we felt that she wasn't saying enough to Congress and she wasn't fully telling the full picture of what was going on. So our campus Chabad that evening was actually having an event to bring together the Jewish community to show us support. And so I was planning on going to that. And so I was leaving my dorm and walking to the Chabad house. Keep in mind, at this point, there was only a few entrances in which we could leave campus on. And so as I was walking by, I was walking through one of the protests, and I was told to keep on testifying, you effing Jew. Ironically, I wasn't in any of the testimonies or in any of the press conferences that were held at Capitol Hill that day or in the month prior when Jewish students went to testify in front of the House Committee for Education and the Workforce. Yet I was still yelled at. And then so afterwards, I took off my yarmulke, put it in my pocket, and then continued walking over to the Chabad house. The day after, a Jewish student was seeking help moving out because of everything going on campus with rises in anti-Semitism, continued calls for Jews to not be welcome on our university, particularly outside of the gates of the university on 116th and Broadway. And so as I was helping this Jewish student move out and helping carry their things out to the road, we were yelled at and told, we are so happy you Zionists are finally leaving campus, and you wouldn't have to leave if you weren't a supporter of genocide. Then on Friday, I was already planning on departing campus for a work event that I already had pre-scheduled. But as I was leaving campus, going out through the other gate on 116th in Amsterdam, this individual and protester out in front of the gate used an anti-Semitic slur, the K slur, and told me, UK, keep on walking, it's time for you to leave. And so they've told me these things, and I don't feel safe or welcome on campus because the only identifier that I am Jewish is my yarmulke and my Star of David necklace. And that's the only thing which would associate me with any of these causes. I'm not walking around with an Israeli flag or anything else, taking a political stance in these protests. It's simply a symbol of my Judaism. That seems to be the issue.
So Nadia, Parker, and I appreciate your honesty and you coming on this show and telling us exactly what's been happening. So Nadia, what do you have to say about that? I mean, no student should have to go through that. We're talking about Columbia University, which is in an area that is heavily Democratic, I should point out, an Ivy League institution where people are spending $90,000 to send their kids there or taking out loans to go there. And you have a fellow student who doesn't even feel safe.
I think Palestinians would be the first to relate to that pain and
are you okay with everything he's gone through?
Absolutely not. And it's unacceptable to feel unsafe on campus. But it's important not to conflate the call for justice and peace with anti-Semitic actions or hate speech. In fact,
but it seems like the line's being blurred, Nadia. That's why I wanted to have you on the show, because it seems like the line's being blurred.
The line is being blurred, and there's unfortunately a misportrayal. One should not conflate the call for the respect of human rights and international law with hate speech. And in fact, if you look around the entrance of the lawn where the students are, there are guidelines for respecting one another, respecting university staff, the rest of the student body, the physical space that the students are in. They're really trying to create a space for empathy, for dialogue, and for respect for one another.
So what do you think's happened?
Unfortunately, we've lost track of the main message of the protest. It's a fundamentally peaceful message. It's a call for an end to the killing of innocent lives, and it's actually inspired by other historic protests on Columbia's campus, including demonstrations against the Vietnam War in the 60s, demonstrations against apartheid in the 80s. It's a peaceful message.
Why do you think that message has gotten lost?
It's unfortunate, the people who carry out hateful actions are not condoned by the protest, and they are not recognized as part of the community. Do you think they're students? Do
you think they're people that have just come in and sort of made their way into these protests?
They might be, but I can tell you for sure that the students who are speaking out for Palestinian rights are carrying a message of peace, fundamentally a message of peace, and they have clear guidelines for how to do that. They're trying to do it in a thoughtful way, and they would not, under any circumstances, condone any actions that would put another student at risk.
Nadia, we wanted to have you and Parker on at the same time because one of the things we've seen is that both sides aren't talking because there's so much screaming, there's so much yelling, there's anti-Semitism, kids don't feel safe. You can talk to Parker right now live. What would you want him to understand about your point of view?
Parker, I want you to know that it is absolutely unacceptable for any student to feel unsafe on campus, and I want you to know that Palestinians and allies of Palestinians would relate to that pain and would absolutely know what it's like to feel intimidated and to have their identity stigmatized, and that is absolutely unacceptable. And there is common ground here, which is a call for an end to violence, a call for an end to the death toll. I think that you can trust that Palestinians know exactly what it's like to be intimidated and to not feel safe on campus, and that is not how it should be.
Parker, what would you like to say?
I would like to say that I think there has also been a level of hate that has come from our side of the aisle as well. And the rise in Islamophobia on Columbia's campus is also incredibly unaccepted. And the rise in overall hatred on our campus is unacceptable. I think I'll be the first to say, coming from those students who speak for the Jewish community, who speak for the individuals supporting Israel, we also want to condemn the high amounts of harassment and violent rhetoric that's being put at individuals, specifically protesters going on. I think a lot of times this issue becomes incredibly heated. It's very emotionally charged with individuals having many families in Israel, having personal associations, and feeling themselves when they hear calls in which they say they don't want Jews on campus or they don't want Zionists on campus. There's a lot of Jews who feel that Zionism is inextricably combined with their identities. And so a lot of times people feel that those calls in and of themselves don't welcome conversation. But I also want to let you know that I don't want violence in the Middle East. I don't want violence in Gaza. I don't want the loss of innocent life. And I, just like you, want an end to this war, because this going on isn't productive. It's not helping anyone, and it's not moving us forward. I think what's really important is that we continue having dialogue like this that's managed and it's built with a mutual assured respect between individuals. And it's focusing on the fact that we do share struggles and inabilities, and we share marginalization, but that we can partner together in these experiences to want to fight the issues of Islamophobia, of anti-Semitism, of violence, and rhetoric which specifically marginalizes communities together.
So, Nadia, I've learned more just from your conversation with Parker than from seeing any of the videos online, all over social media of all these protests. Why can this happen here, but it can't happen on campus? Do you blame the faculty? Has the faculty sort of lost control of the situation?
I think, unfortunately, things get heated on campus and students can lose track of what is really important here. But I'm glad to have this opportunity to show that ultimately, we're all here for what we're trying to achieve with higher education here is to be trained to be positive forces of change in the world, to think critically about what is happening around us, to be sensitive to other people's point of view, and to speak out for human rights. And I think both Parker and I would agree that that is fundamentally what we're trying to do here.
Do you think there's a time where Parker will feel like he's safe again on Columbia's campus?
I certainly hope so, and that is how it should be, and that is the responsibility of the campus, is to make sure that both Parker and all the student body and the protesters feel safe on campus.
Parker, what will it take for you to return back to campus?
I think first it requires a large sum of accountability from our administration and making a broad statement about anti-Semitism. I think they've made statements about how students might be experiencing these different things, or how rising conflict on campus, or how relationships have been strained. We've been using very flowery language coming from our administration, but no one from the administration has taken a concrete stance where the message is, we don't want anti-Semitism to go on our campus. And I think that's something, there needs to be accountability within there, but also needs to be accountability within our security forces on campus. There are Jewish students reaching out to public safety on our campus, reaching out to the large presence of NYPD on the streets, asking for support. And they're telling us they don't know what to do. They don't know how to help us. It's not our problem. And so we're dealing with these issues all on our own, where the only support and resources we have are from our own religious life. And so for me to come back to campus, and I think for a lot of other Jewish students to come back to campus, first and foremost, it requires Columbia to gain accountability and take accountability for their actions. It also requires for individuals on the other side of the aisle, specifically those that are out on the streets, not even in campus, to allow us to engage in the dialogue where we feel that we're able to be welcome and respecting these conversations, and that our identities don't immediately make us a target for harassment, or we're told that we're not welcome in this conversation, or that just because we're Zionist or pro-Israel or Jewish, that they don't want us in these conversations. And so I think when we have that level of welcomed knowledge and the ability to partake in that dialogue, and the university encourages this level of discussion, that's when Jewish students can finally come back to campus and engage in this critical conversation about how can we address these geopolitical issues that are facing and challenging our generation.
Parker to Decker, we appreciate your time. Nadia, Ali as well. I hope we can get to a place where you guys can both have your protests, but also students can feel safe at the same time. We thank you again for your time for coming here. We do want to move on out of the latest in former President Donald Trump's hush money trial here in New York. The former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, testified in court today, detailing how he helped the former president's 2016 campaign, giving a behind-the-scenes look at the tabloid's catch-and-kill strategy. NBC senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett is at the courthouse with the latest.
Tonight, Mr. Trump's longtime friend David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, offering the jury a rare glimpse into the underworld of tabloid tactics as the state seeks to prove the former president doctored his internal business records to cover up the payoff of an adult film actress just days before the 2016 election.
Mr. Trump, what do you think of David Pecker?
Pecker describing a meeting at Trump Tower in 2015 with Mr. Trump and his former fixer Michael Cohen, where Pecker says he agreed to serve as the eyes and ears for rumors that could hurt Mr. Trump, adding, "What I would do is publish positive stories about Trump and publish negative stories about his opponents." The prosecution then showing the jury a series of glowing headlines about then-candidate Trump and derogatory ones making baseless claims about Mr. Trump's Republican opponents, including Ted Cruz. Pecker admitting today the Enquirer made up a story linking Cruz's father to the man who assassinated JFK. Pecker also testifying his company paid a doorman $30,000 for a completely untrue story about Mr. Trump fathering a child with his housekeeper, so the doorman couldn't take the story elsewhere, trying to save Mr. Trump and the campaign the potential embarrassment. The day began with the judge taking the defense team to task over Mr. Trump's posts on social media, targeting Cohen and Stormy Daniels. The state seeking to hold Mr. Trump in criminal contempt for violating the judge's gag order that bars him from attacking trial witnesses.
So they can talk about me, they can say whatever they want, they can lie, but I'm not allowed to say anything. I'd love to say everything that's on my mind.
In court, the defense arguing Mr. Trump should be permitted to respond to political attacks, and the gag order should not cover reposts of someone else. The judge didn't rule today, but seemed exasperated, telling lead defense attorney Todd Blanche, "You are losing all credibility with the court." Minutes later, during a break, Mr. Trump back on Truth Social, falsely writing the judge had taken away his right to free speech. This is a kangaroo court.
All right, Laura Jarrett joins us tonight from outside that courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Laura, something mentioned in court today was that 2016 National Enquirer headline that connected Ted Cruz's father to the JFK assassination. What exactly did David Pecker say about that wild story?
Well, Tom, Pecker essentially said that none of this was true. It was all made up. This whole connection with Cruz and Lee Harvey Oswald and his father, all of it originated with Dylan Howard, the former executive at the National Enquirer, who was sort of one of the liaisons to the Trump campaign and Mr. Cohen. But today, Pecker admitting that all of this was essentially fabricated, embellished, if you will, to help Mr. Trump get elected in 2016.
And I guess it shouldn't surprise our viewers that the National Enquirer completely made up a story with some of the headlines they have. But when you have somebody like David Pecker, and I know I asked you about this about Michael Cohen as well, who has repeatedly profited, literally made money off lies, how does the prosecution use him to their advantage when he has a history of lying?
They confront it directly, and that's what they did today, Tom, sort of drawing out all of the bad inferences that one could make about what Mr. Pecker does for a living and did for a living for so long. And I also think the jury is going to assess his credibility, Tom. He was frank. He was forthright. He didn't sugarcoat the facts. He was speaking sort of slowly and methodically at times. And I think they're going to decide for themselves whether they believe him, Tom.
And I know that he said that him and the former president Donald Trump had a very close relationship. He would call him Donald. We haven't heard yet the cross-examination from the defense just yet. Do we know what we can expect?
That should be starting on Thursday morning time. And I think that what you're going to hear is that Pecker was trying to protect Trump the man instead of Trump the candidate. Now, that's going to be a hard thing to do based off of what Pecker said here today on his direct testimony. But I think that the link that you're going to want to try to see and the thread that you're going to want to try to see the defense team pull is that Pecker was trying to protect him from the embarrassment with his family. You sort of saw a little bit of that coming out today, and I think that that's what they're going to try to exploit on cross-examination, Tom.
Okay, Laura Jarrett for us tonight. Laura, we thank you for all your reporting. We're going to head to Washington now, where the Senate debates TikTok's future in the U.S. Some calling the popular social media app a threat to national security, with Chinese parent company ByteDance having access to user data. Now a vote is imminent on Capitol Hill that could lead to an outright ban of the platform in just 9 months. NBC's Savannah Sellers has the latest.
TikTok is a major foreign threat. The bill we are passing today puts an end to that.
Tonight, the Senate debating the future of TikTok, ahead of a vote that could effectively ban the wildly popular app in the U.S.
Foreign adversaries use technology for social and political control.
Many Americans, particularly young Americans, are rightfully skeptical. At the end of the day, they've not seen what Congress has seen. They've not been in the classified briefings that Congress has held.
While TikTokers just outside make an urgent plea at the Capitol.
Every bit of my livelihood is tethered to TikTok.
Our elected officials are on TikTok. We believe if it were dangerous, they shouldn't be there, but they keep trying to reach us there when it's convenient.
This vote, the last step before the legislation would head to President Biden's desk. He's indicated he'll sign it, triggering a countdown. The app's Chinese parent company would have at least 9 months to sell the platform. If they don't, it would be removed from the App Store. It wouldn't disappear from phones, but no new downloads or updates would be possible. But that's likely years away, if at all, because of TikTok's promised legal challenge to the potential law. Writing in an internal memo, we will move to the courts, and arguing the ban would impede on the free speech of users.
Save TikTok!
But some senators say TikTok's ownership by Chinese parent company ByteDance raises serious security and data concerns.
Through this process, have you learned anything about Americans' data on TikTok that does really concern you? Anything concrete?
Yes. Rivers of data are being collected and shared in ways that are not well aligned with American security.
TikTok, the closest it's been to time running out.
Okay, Savannah Sellers joins us tonight from Washington. Savannah, Senator Coons just there in your story saying that TikTok user data is being shared in ways that don't align with American security, but there's very few specifics on what that exactly means, right?
Hey, Tom, good evening. That's exactly right. And it's a little scary. I mean, we've been asking for those details. But what lawmakers have been having are these closed-door briefings with national security officials. And look what we're getting out of it. Pretty much bipartisan support of the potential to ban this app here in the United States. We do not have those details. Meanwhile, TikTok, for its part, has been denying that they share any type of American data with the Chinese government, denying that they've been asked to do so. But that is what is at issue here. And as you heard, lawmakers are saying that they are hearing things that concern them greatly.
All right, Savannah Sellers from Capitol Hill tonight. Savannah, thank you. And now to the latest on Tesla, where just moments ago the company reported its biggest revenue drop in more than a decade. Juan Venegas joins us now live tonight with the breaking news. Juan, there was a lot of skepticism going into that call today. What happened?
That's right, Tom. Well, it's the first time investors are hearing from Tesla after the announcement of the layoffs across the company, and the drop exceeds what analysts had predicted for weeks. The company's seen a 9% drop in revenue. That's the largest dip since 2012, even lower than in 2020 when the company had to stop production during the COVID pandemic. Elon Musk and Tesla now facing pressure from investors after what has been a bumpy start to the year.
Tonight, the numbers are in, and Tesla has fallen short of expectations. Elon Musk's electric vehicle company releasing its first quarter earnings, showing its biggest revenue drop in over a decade by 9%.
Clock has struck midnight for Musk to lay out a strategic plan for the future.
For weeks, analysts speculated on a drop, which Musk adamantly brushed aside, including in his most recent interview with Don Lemon.
Tesla is worth about as much as the rest of the car industry combined, from nothing. So, that's pretty good.
We got here from a CEO who effectively sells dreams, and they factor these dreams into the valuation. And what we're seeing increasingly with each passing day, but these dreams are really not true. They're fantasies.
It all comes as the tech giant faced a bumpy start to the year.
So apparently the Cybertruck has a stop zone, and
I might know why.
Including the recent recall of 4,000 Cybertrucks after some users raised concerns over a faulty accelerator.
As I'm driving, this slid up and wedged itself just like that. It held the accelerator down 100%, at full throttle.
In the first 3 months of the year, car sales dropping 8.5%, adding to a plummeting stock price that so far this year has gone down over 40%. On Monday, Tesla announcing the layoff of 2,600 employees from its Texas factory. This is part of the company's plan to lay off 10% of its workforce.
These layoffs are not being done to cut costs. These layoffs are being done because they don't have the demand to meet the current production.
But today's figures reflecting a changing market as electric vehicle sales drop across the board and more brands compete for customers. Car makers, including Tesla, now cutting prices. The Wall Street Journal reporting a political shift also at play, with Democrats who once openly supported EVs now shying away from the company. This after fiery comments made by Musk on X, formerly Twitter, about immigration and anti-Semitism, comments he later apologized for, but has responded to in the past, like last year on CNBC.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
All right, Grod, now back with the squad. Given today's earnings, is there any indication of what Elon Musk will do next? I know he's telling his team he wants to really invest in robo-taxis.
He does. And Tom, one thing to note about today is that despite the loss in revenue in Tesla's in the company, the stock actually went up more than 10% since that report was released. Now, there's also a lot of anticipation to August 8 because of the robo-taxi. That's when Elon Musk said he's going to be sharing details about that, which is something different from the autopilot or the supervised full self-driving, which the current Teslas can do, but do require the human on the wheel. We can expect something like Waymo, which is testing service in cities like LA and San Francisco with self-driving cars, but perhaps different and better because it's Tesla. Now, today's report also gave insight into an app that Tesla is going to be launching for ride-hailing services. It looks a lot like Uber, but for Teslas, and we can only imagine of the capabilities if the full self-driving option is used, or maybe in the future, Tesla cars can drive themselves just like the robo-taxi is expected to do so. Tom?
Yeah, don't count Elon Musk out just yet, that's for sure. Okay, Gwad, we thank you for that. Still ahead tonight, a major move from the Federal Trade Commission that could impact your contract. The commission banning nearly all non-compete clauses, which prevents some professionals from quitting their jobs and taking another with competitors. What you need to know tonight. Plus, a deadly military helicopter crash caught on camera overseas, what they were training for at the time of the collision. And to catch a car thief, a California man taking it upon himself to track down his BMW after it was stolen from his driveway, how he tracked the car down, and the moment he confronted that suspected thief. Stay with us. Okay, now to a car theft in California solved by an amateur detective with the help of an AirTag. A Long Beach man tracking down his own stolen vehicle and confronting the suspected thief thanks to the GPS tracking device, which some police departments are now recommending for all drivers. But experts warn you should proceed with caution. Here's NBC's Stephen Romo.
When Long Beach, California resident Philip Obando realized his BMW had been stolen.
And I walk out of my house and there's no car, and I'm just flabbergasted.
He decided to take matters into his own hands.
Here it is.
With the help of this, an Apple AirTag he had hidden in the car for exactly this situation. Dashcam recovered from the stolen car, capturing the overnight adventure the thief took through Long Beach, appearing to smoke inside the car before evidently falling asleep until dawn. He even picks someone else up.
You know, I'm gonna park this here somewhere and pick the other one too.
And he stops at a car wash. But while the thief was on a joyride, Obando and his wife were getting to work. They say they called police and were following the BMW using the AirTag's GPS, finding out it had not gotten far.
My wife said, there's the car, and the person is gassing the car, fueling it. She said, get out of the car and go get it.
Video from Obando's wife's dashcam shows Obando running toward the gas station and confronting that suspect.
I said, hey, this is my car. And the guy replied with, like, no, this is my car. And I said, really? I had an extra fob, clicked it, car beeped. That's when the guy said, oh, man, and he just fled.
Even though Obando says the suspect had knives in the car, he got it back without issue. But security experts warn against using that tactic.
People will sometimes take the law into their own hands. The suspect might be armed. He may have a knife. He may have a gun on him.
Some police departments, though, are encouraging the use of AirTags in a responsible way.
This simple device, this simple AirTag, hidden in a car.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the NYPD encouraging residents to use the tags for tracking.
We have live tracking.
But to let police physically track down the suspects.
I have one in my car, and I like to think that if anything were to happen, I'd use it to aid the police. But that's a decision you have to make in real time.
Back in California, Obando says the suspect didn't make a clean getaway, leaving behind drug paraphernalia and even a wallet that revealed he was their neighbor.
We looked up his address, and sadly, it's really not far from where we live, so that's scary.
Obando says he turned that stuff over to investigators. The Long Beach Police Department telling NBC News no arrests have been made and the investigation is ongoing.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now. Stephen, a lot to unpack here. I do want to ask you, though, there's obviously a lot of good sides, but there are some downsides to this. You got to be careful, right?
Yeah, there are things experts do warn about. Mostly they say it's great to find stolen stuff, but let police handle it. Don't just go and try to find the person on your own. There's actually a recent case out of San Antonio, Texas, where a man went to find his stolen truck, ended up shooting a person who was in that vehicle. And again, call police, let them sort it out. That's what the experts tell us. There are also privacy concerns. Partners might be able to track someone they suspect may be cheating, that kind of thing you don't want to be tracked for. So something else to consider when trying to get these AirTags. But there are a lot of success stories as well, Tom.
Yeah, might be smart to keep them in your car. All right, thanks so much, Stephen. When we come back, that disturbing kidnapping captured on a doorbell cam. Have you seen this? A woman clinging to the front door, pleading for help as she is dragged away. The arrest just made in this case. Next. An urgent effort to save dozens of dogs that were trapped inside of a hotel as a fire closed in. Body cam footage shows officers rush into the Pet Hotel in Fairfield, New Jersey. The facility filled with heavy smoke coming from a fire at the business next door. Police say a total of 46 dogs had to be rescued. They were all safely rescued out of that hotel and reunited with their owners. Okay. Now to a new federal rule that could dramatically change the job market. Earlier today, the Federal Trade Commission voted 3-2 in favor of banning non-compete clauses, a common element of contracts that prevent employees from moving to competitors and are common across the finance and IT industries, and of course right here on television. Here to break down what that change could mean and how it could impact your job, I want to bring in our friend, NBC News legal analyst, Angela Senadella. So Angela, talk to me. Is this groundbreaking? Is this going to change the business world as we know it?
Well, it is a big deal. It really means that for anyone who makes under $151,164 a year and is not in a policy-making role, that you can go work for a competitor, and that last employer cannot sue you. So this is only if the rule stands. But it is a big deal because right now, if you have that non-compete clause in your employment agreement, and that's usually language that says something like, after the termination of your employment for X number of months, you cannot work for a competitor. Now, theoretically, you freely can.
But I got to ask you, I mean, some people will come in, they can work at a company for a year, even if they're making this salary here, which is still pretty good money, they could be exposed to a lot of the trade secrets. They could be exposed to the company's strategy. They could get access to the CEO and big meetings. Couldn't they just take that information and then walk across the street without the non-competes?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what the whole pro-business argument for this, against this ban. But I will say there's a lot of things that lawyers for companies can do. Confidentiality provisions go so far. So even if you can go across the street and work for a competitor, you still can't give up those trade secrets. Like, those outlast the term of your employment. So theoretically, you should be able to move around, according to this ban, and get higher salaries, get competitive salaries.
Yeah.
You just can't share trade secrets.
And that's what the thinking is behind that, what the FTC was saying, right? It would increase people's salaries.
Yeah, exactly. That they've done a lot of research that shows that it suppresses wages to not have this competitive market, that not being able to go out to a competitor and see what you're worth will just keep that one company paying you less over the years.
So if I live in Florida right now or any other state that hasn't passed a state non-compete law, I'm looking at this FTC ruling. Can I tear up my contract? Can I walk across the street?
No, absolutely not. So this ruling doesn't go into effect for another 120 days. And I also think it'll be challenged extensively through the court system.
Who's going to challenge this?
Well, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has already said they will file suit next week. Also, large private companies want to stop this because
companies like Amazon say.
Well, actually, no, because of what they're doing.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, what they're doing in California, they actually can't. California, it's outlawed. So a lot of these tech companies have actually come across the side and decided that non-competes are not even working for them. So in a competitive market, when you want to attract better employees, often you get rid of things like this anyway. So I think we're actually turning the tide against them, even though they've been around for hundreds of years.
President Biden has campaigned on this as well. What do you think sort of the long-term, I don't know, goal of the FTC passing this right now? I mean, you actually think it'll just help the trend move in that direction?
I do. So look, only three unelected officials are the ones who passed this ruling, which will affect the entire country. So the likelihood of the Supreme Court upholding that, given the major questions doctrine, how that should be Congress, it should be elected officials who make these huge decisions, it's unlikely that this actual ruling is going to stay forever. But that said, it's going to make companies start to rethink their policies. And in a competitive market, if some companies stop offering non-competes, their competitors are also going to stop because everyone wants to attract the best talent.
I know in civil litigation, non-competes, I mean, there's a lot of legal work there where one company will sue another company for stealing their employee. What have the high courts, the federal courts, what have they said about non-competes? Do they think they're legal? Do they stand the law? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, they do for now, up until this ban, or where it's not outlawed, because the theory is that employers and employees can make their own decisions. They make their agreements. Nobody's forcing you to sign the non-compete to begin with. But the problem really turns in when there's industries where everyone signs a non-compete, and that's just the norm, then people don't have a lot of leverage. So the idea here is that if you make that illegal, then people have more leverage.
What do you think the courts are going to say?
Well, I think the courts are going to say that this agency doesn't have the power. They're not going to say that the actual non-compete ban itself is necessarily unconstitutional. It's just that this one agency, there are three people. Again, it was a 3-2 ruling that passed. Cannot change.
So don't tear up your contract right now.
No, not yet. Okay. And at least wait 120 days.
All right. Angela Sanadella, always great to have you. Okay, now to top stories global watch and a check of what else is happening around the world. We begin with a deadly military helicopter crash in Malaysia. Video shows the helicopter flying low in formation when one chopper clips another, sending both aircrafts plummeting to the ground. All 10 people on board were killed. The military says the crews were taking part in a rehearsal for the Navy's 90th anniversary parade, which was scheduled for Saturday. Authorities in Ecuador are recapturing the leader of a notorious drug trafficking gang. Video shows national police ramming into a home in Puerto Quito, quickly taking alleged Los Lobos leader known as Captain Pico and multiple others into custody. Pico escaped from prison in that massive break we told you about back in January amid a wave of violence in the country, which included the armed invasion of a live television broadcast. And 4 spears that were taken from Australia's Aboriginal people more than 250 years ago finally returned. The artifacts were handed over, in a ceremony at Cambridge, where they have been held since the early 20th century. The spears were stolen by British explorer Captain James Cook, the first known European to reach eastern Australia. The spears will be on display at a new visitor center to be built in New South Wales. Welcome back. A big headline caught our eye on the latest possible side effect from popular weight loss drugs like Ozempic. It's a trend called Ozempic babies, and women are taking to the internet to talk about their surprise pregnancies while taking the drug, even if they were on birth control or dealing with fertility issues. It's just the latest twist in the weight loss drug craze that has swept this nation. For more on this, I want to bring in Dr. Camila Phillips. She's a board-certified OBGYN and a founder of Kala Women's Health. Dr. Phillips, thanks so much for joining Top Story tonight.
Thank you.
What is this about?
So anytime we have a community of people going through extensive weight loss, we see increased fertility rates. Now, with the Ozempic and the GLP category, we're not seeing huge population shifts, but yes, certainly more women are saying that they're pregnant because they're losing weight. And we know that obesity is a risk factor for fertility.
And so should people who don't want to get pregnant maybe not get on Ozempic, or it's kind of like those two aren't connected?
Not really connected. If you need an Ozempic type medicine, then for your health, diabetes, you should get on it. But it's important that you talk to your healthcare provider because some of the GLPs do actually need a shift in your birth control method or even a backup, while others don't. So it is important that you engage your doctor in this decision.
Does it affect birth control if you are on birth control?
So one of the GLPs, yes, it's recommended that 4 weeks before starting, you have a backup. And every time you increase your dose, you actually use a backup of birth control. Now, this only goes for oral medications. We don't see that in the long-acting or any non-oral form of contraception.
Would you prescribe Ozempic in patients who are trying to get pregnant, but they're having trouble?
So that's a multi-tiered answer. I would prescribe it to patients who want to lose weight in relation to their healthcare journey and anticipation of getting pregnant, but I would not be prescribing this for the sole purpose of pregnancy.
Is it taking people by surprise from what you're finding in your practice?
It does take people by surprise, but anytime, again, we saw this when we were having the bariatric weight loss craze, people get pregnant when you fix the actual issue, which for some people is fertility. Well, sorry, some people's weight loss because you're not ovulating, your ovaries are quiet. It's a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Once you correct that, correct the obesity, you'll get pregnant.
And then what happens if people are on Ozempic, they get pregnant? Do they need to stop Ozempic? Or the drugs like it?
Yes. So you should stop Ozempic or any drug like it immediately and let your doctor know so that we can follow you. Right now, we've not seen any adverse effects as it relates to pregnancy, but you should not be on Ozempic while pregnant.
Dr. Phillips, it's funny because we do all these stories and it's all about positives that happen with these types of drugs. Does it concern you at all? Maybe it's just because I'm a journalist, but does it concern you at all that everything that comes out about these things is just positive? I mean, is it a miracle drug?
You know, I am very pro GLP medications. This medication in this line has really changed the lives of people who have trouble losing weight and maintaining their weight. So I'm a proponent for the medication. So far, everything has been positive, and we just have to wait and see how this plays out.
All right, Dr. Camila Phillips, I'm glad we're getting this out there for people trying to get pregnant, maybe not trying to get pregnant, but they're going to learn. We thank you so much for joining Top Story. And we thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.